Welcome back to That's a Good Word, a podcast designed to assist and equip Christians through advice from people in ministry. If you're blessed by our content, we'd appreciate if you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and feel free to follow us on any of your social media accounts as well. Feel free to also check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. We are honored today to have on Mr. Matthew Fleming from Arborway Community Church in Boston. He's the director of worship and discipleship there. We're honored that he has come on, giving us his time. He is, but I mean, from what you're doing, it's a lot of missionary work. You're doing a lot there. It's an area that he mentioned is very 2 to 4% Christian.
Yeah, our
So
neighborhood is, yeah.
yeah, so it's very much a missionary type work there. And Paul Fleming's son, and he has just been very gracious to give us his time here today, home from Boston for the holidays. Thank
That's
you so
right.
much, Matthew, for being here.
Thanks, man. Got to come home during Clemson Carolina week.
Right,
That's
that's right.
kind of the way it goes. Yeah,
As a Carolina fan, it was a rough weekend for me. But
yeah.
you give Clemson credit, phenomenal defense,
There you go.
phenomenal defense. So, give you an opportunity to share your testimony and then your
Sure.
story about how you're at Arbor Way community.
Yeah, well, my testimony is mostly around here, right? Grew up in Travelers Rest area. Lived here until I was 27 or so before I moved away. And um, when I was in middle school, it was kind of really, I grew up in church, dad being a pastor and everything. And I was in middle school and I had a time of really about 3, 4 weeks where I had a tough time falling asleep at night. It was just kind of under a lot of conviction. I'd, grown up in church. I had, walked an aisle in VBS when I was like 4 or 5 or something, and just never really had anything settled. It was just kind of like, this is
Mhm.
the church thing to do. And so I had that period of like 3 or 4 weeks where I was just under a lot of conviction at night. Couldn't fall asleep very easily. Just kind of knew that I didn't have things settled. I wasn't in a good place in terms of my relationship with God. It was just kind of like a living off of a made up faith kind of thing. And yeah, kind of got to that point where God just got a hold of me. I was like, you know what, it's not worth saving face or whatever to, everybody thinks you're a preacher's kid or whatever, and you walked an aisle, so you must have it settled and all that stuff. And it's just, it wasn't worth what people thought of me or whatever to not truly humble myself and come to the Lord. So walked downstairs, talked to Dad. He was wondering why I was not in bed at like whatever it was, 11 o'clock at night or whatever,
Right.
and had a good conversation and just kind of got things straight. Really gave my life to the Lord there, and was baptized after that. And it was half a relief and half just this overwhelming joy kind of thing, and
Right.
and trying to. You kind of have that awesome moment of um, kind of knowing that it's not like I made a good decision. It's like now my eternity is settled, like, which
Hmm.
is it's just such a great feeling. And then that obviously leads itself into, okay, well, cool. Well, then what's next? Like, what do I do with this?
Right.
And so God just kind of did a lot of things and put some things in my life that I never even thought about. I knew some musicians that I really respected and looked up to. Oh, it'd be cool to play guitar. Let's learn how to play guitar. Started that journey and had no thought of leading worship one day or doing anything like that. And started at a had a youth pastor at Forestville that when I was 16, I was just kind of he played guitar and I played guitar. We'd kind of mess around before youth and stuff, whatever. And he's like, "Man, you're starting to sound good. Hey, you're leading next week." And I was like, "Yeah, what?" And so I super appreciate that push. And I kind of did it, and it was really bad for a while, and something that God used to where I led worship there for other than about a year and a half where I interned at a different church. I was there for about 11 years leading worship for
Hmm.
the same youth group. Um, and then a couple years into that, at a youth camp as a junior or senior, I'm not even sure which one. Uh, God really kind of laid on my heart that the ministry was something He was calling me to, and I I half surrendered to it. Is kind of the way I say it, where I was
Right.
like, okay, like you want me to do something ministry wise, I'll do that, but kind of in the back of my mind had some reservations about that in terms of I'll do it as long as it's not this or this or this. Like, I don't really want to preach. I don't really want to, like, I don't know if I want to be on staff at a church or something. Maybe just like serve God in church by doing music and then still kind of living a normal life outside of that or whatever. And I would say it was a pretty long, I don't know, 7 or 8 year journey of kind of like half running from that call.
Mm-hmm.
And God used a guy in a relationship in my life where we were having a conversation about something that had absolutely zero to do with the ministry or school or anything like that. And he just kind of dropped this random truth bomb in the middle of the conversation of like, hey, if God called you to ministry, why aren't you like in school, like studying and getting ready for that? And I'm just kind of
Yeah.
like, what? And it was just it was almost like God just smacked me in the face with it. And I knew, like, I didn't even have a rebuttal to him. Like
Right.
it hit kind of straight to the heart. And um, so yeah, it kind of started my journey. I'm at Fruitland. I'm still there. Been a long process. Getting close to to being done though. Almost done finally. But doing that online, and that led pretty quickly within the next couple of years after that to a ministry position at a church in North Carolina where there's a guy named Ivy Rhodes who is our pastor now at Arborway Community Church in Boston. That's the connection there. His dad and my dad were roommates in college, and
Mm-hmm.
we were the go on vacation together, families, and just were really close and grew up together and stuff. He was a youth pastor while he was at seminary in Wake Forest, and he was a youth pastor at a church in North Raleigh. And their music guy had left, and so he was doing that because a lot of youth guys get roped into doing the extra thing that's around when it needs to be done. And so he was doing that and just kind of called and said, hey, I don't know if you're interested or not, but we have a music position open.
Yeah.
Sent my resume in, again, still kind of a little begrudgingly, not really wanting to be on staff at a church and really not wanting to leave what I was doing. I was enjoying leading for youth. I love doing youth things, camps, weekends, retreats, all those kind of things. Still some of my favorite stuff to do from a musical standpoint, and getting to hang out with kids. I have about the same maturity level as a middle schooler, so it works out well. Um, and and yeah, it was just something that like God just opened that door in North Carolina and Raleigh, and kind of waited for a few months for him to close it, and he just never did. And so kind of took that step of faith, went up there. Um, the funny part about that is Dad had kind of said, "Hey, you know what? This is a chance for you to get to work with Ivy." Ivy, we all knew it was going to be there and go plant a church somewhere in one of the large cities in America. He wasn't sure which one at that point, but Dad said, hey, "This is a chance that you get to go work with Ivy and see if maybe, there's like a long term. Maybe you go work with him and wherever he goes, kind of thing." It's like, yeah, cool, that's great. Didn't really think a whole lot about it, and then I was there for about a year before Ivy left. He graduated and went to Boston to start the church, Arborway. And I just again got under conviction right as he was getting ready to leave, and kind of said, "Hey man, I feel like God might be calling me up there to work with you at some point." It's like, not now, but later. And I was like, I don't even know if that's a helpful thing to hear. Like this guy that wants to come help you at some point in the future, but not doesn't know when.
Yeah.
And we had some conversations over the next 4.5-ish years about like, hey, are you still interested? And I was like, I mean, I still feel like God has me where he wants me now, but is also at some point going to call me there. And then over Christmas, I guess 3 years ago now, he called me. I was on the way home, driving from North Carolina down here for the holiday, and he just asked me to pray about praying about it, is what his words were. And I was like, yeah, man, of course. And then we got off the phone, and I still had a couple hours of a drive left, so I started to pray and just kind of said, "Hey, dear Lord Jesus," and that's really all. That was my whole prayer. Like at that point, I knew. I was like, "Oh, okay, this is different. This is something I had been praying about for a while, and felt like I was where God wanted me to be, and that was not the move he wanted me to make yet." And then immediately in starting that prayer was like, okay, there's something different here. And God's done a lot of things from that point forwards to not only get me to Boston, but to keep me there so far, not having to work a second job, and so far having housing provided in ways that it's just, I mean, Boston's. We'll talk about it a little bit. It's just such a crazy expensive place to live, and
Right.
when you are raising money, especially I'm trying to raise money from the people that the connections that I have here. Those connections are used to life, certain things costing certain amounts, right? You got to
Mm-hmm.
raise this amount of money for, an apartment or something. Well, you got to basically double that for an apartment in Boston. And
Right.
so it's just,
Right.
it's been difficult in some ways. And in other ways, it's just been cool to kind of watch God work, even in the stuff that is difficult. And so I've been there for, um, 2.5 years now, which is kind of crazy. It seems like I just got there. I still feel new. Um, but yeah, God's done some really cool stuff. The church is now 6 years old. Um, and in Jamaica Plain is the neighborhood that we're at in Boston. About 40,000 people in Jamaica Plain. Um, there are 3 gospel preaching churches, and we are really the longest, like that's actually in Jamaica Plain. One of those 3 churches is kind of on the edge of Jamaica Plain. It borders 2 different kind of neighborhoods. But as far as being in Jamaica Plain, we're like the longest lasting church as for
Hmm.
like 6 years. That is a gospel preaching church that we even have record of that we can find. So
Wow.
um,
Wow.
it's been interesting. We don't really know why we're the church that God has decided that would last for this amount of time, but we're trying to be faithful and do what he's called and asked us to do, and we're both in it for the long haul. So
Right.
that's
Awesome.
that's the I guess the shortish version of the testimony.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well,
Mhm.
it's odd that we're talking about two different cities in the same country, and we're going to talk about the differences in culture and the differences in place. But it's kind of what we have to do, and especially for the
Mhm.
people that watch our podcast in the Greenville, in the South Carolina, in different South Carolina cities. We're kind of used to that small hometown feel.
Yeah.
Boston is certainly the opposite of that,
Mhm.
much different. It's a massive, very popular city, and what's different there than here? I mean, we could talk about that probably all day, but
Yeah.
what are some of the differences and the challenges of that we might not understand as
Sure.
people that live in Greenville?
Sure. There's a lot. I think there's a lot that you could probably guess with, like I said, the finances or the traffic,
Right.
uh, um, trying to find a place to park your car and all those kind of things. But there's
Hmm.
some things that I didn't realize when I went there. One, in the greater Boston area, there's something like 100 colleges and universities.
Wow.
So it is a incredibly young city, and that comes with a lot of challenges, just from our educational system in America being very much a certain way when it comes to science and religion and where those things fit in, all kind of stuff. We have a lot of conversations with some younger adults, college students and grad students, and so on and so forth that have this certain scientific reason focused outlook on life that is what's been drilled into them. So there's some of those things that we kind of have to tackle, which has actually been I've enjoyed that part of it. Honestly, it's been cool to kind of watch um, some of those wheels turn in people's head as they see some things that have happened through our church that God has done that don't make sense from a reason standpoint. It's only
Hmm.
because God's done them. So
Right.
it's been really cool to kind of see that. There's some weird challenges that I didn't expect. One, right now at this point in the daylight savings time cycle, it gets dark at like 4 o'clock there now, like 4:15, which
Wow.
sounds like, oh, that's interesting fact or whatever. But honestly, that brings with it this seasonal depression thing that
Hmm.
is it's a real thing there that
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
not ever. I don't know. I just kind of I guess had grown up with the mentality that was it was a rare thing, but rare people dealt with that when
Hmm.
it's like a big thing in Boston where there are people that go to work when it's dark and get out of work when it's dark. And
Mm.
for someone like me who can stay like in the bat cave all day, that's fine. But for a lot of
Right.
people, like not having that sunlight really does cause some depression. And obviously we have the answer to the ultimate depression in Christ, and we also have this city that's really on a footprint. If you look at a map compared to some of the other cities, um, it's not that big. Like the city of Boston's about the same size as one of the boroughs of New York City,
Hmm.
and but
Okay.
you still do have people on top of each other,
Right.
and it's very packed, very dense. And we talk about it all the time in our church that there's just people everywhere, and it's still one of the loneliest cities in the
Mm.
country. It's just because people are um, they moved there for a school or a temporary job thing or a project or whatever. I mean, the average time that a person lives in Boston is 18 to 24 months.
Wow.
And so they're there and they start out alone, and whether or not they make friends or have time for friends or whatever. And so there's a lot of loneliness going around there too, which I don't know. I guess I never thought of
Yeah.
that being an issue in a city where you have, people everywhere.
Right. Oftentimes in Greenville, I mean, many people grow up there, and
Hmm.
you see somebody. It's like, I know that person. They've lived here for 40 years. I know where this person lives, and
Yep.
my buddy lives there. It seems like you can kind of get lost in the crowd. And for many
100%.
people, it seems that might be that way.
100%. You see, I mean, my mentality, or like the picture I have in my mind when I think of that like lonely person in Boston is when you ride the train or ride the bus, and it's that person with just their headphones in, and that's just like how their in between of their life is. So they're never
Right.
interacting with people, which happens. I do that at times, sometimes too, and so just trying to um, kind of play into that in terms of how we share the gospel and how we do things. It's like, we try to do some things that help people in our community meet other people in the community, like do some
Mm,
things that kind of um, benefit the community in a way that maybe gives us some credibility that they would listen to a gospel presentation or listen to some of the things we have to say. So that's been some of the challenges, and then some of the more specific challenges to our neighborhood, Jamaica Plain. The way that I try to describe Jamaica Plain to people down here is that Jamaica Plain is to Boston what Asheville is to the South.
okay.
And so we have a lot of the same things going on, right? And so you have a lot of um, local businesses, some like art, a lot of artistic kind of things going on. We have like from a religious standpoint, you have like a really high number of people that like Universalist, Unitarian, that kind of like they come with this mentality of basically like I believe in a God, I just don't want him to tell me what to do, kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
And then um, you also have like a really high percentage of people in the LGBT community. About 1 in 4 of the women in Jamaica Plain would identify as lesbian.
Hmm.
So it's just a weird mashup of people, and honestly, we're kind of right in the middle. And if you walk out of our church door and go left, a lot of those things I just said is like that's where it's concentrated. And if you walk out of our church door and go right, you have the largest like project housing development in Massachusetts, and there's a ton of people down there, a lot of different ethnicities from all over the world, much more family oriented on that side of town, but also much more open to the gospel because you have a lot of people that come from different countries have they just tend to be more open to the gospel than
Hmm.
some of the people that grew up here, and so it's been interesting to kind of see the gospel make some inroads down that way through some of the ministry opportunities we've got to do. And so what that has done, again, with only 3 gospel preaching churches in our neighborhood, what that's done is that's made our church very diverse from multiple standpoints. One, ethnically, it's just really diverse. That was the first. Dad came up to visit our church last year, and that was his first comment. Was like, "Dude, your church, y'all have like everything." I was like, "Yeah,
Right.
we really do. It's awesome." And it also has made us very diverse in like our spiritual backgrounds, right? So if there's only 3 gospel preaching churches and I'm a Presbyterian or a Methodist or a Southern Baptist or whatever, like there's only so many options. And so our
Hmm.
church has a little bit of everything. And so it's made worship really fun from my standpoint.
Right.
Because you have people with Catholic background that I don't think they would move if you paid them to, and then we have some people from like charismatic backgrounds that came from Africa and very like expressive worshipers that I don't think they could sit still if you paid them to. So it's been really fun to kind
Yeah.
of see how God has kind of puzzle pieced us together to minister to
Mm.
that community. But there's a lot of challenges in Boston. It really is. But also it's like really clear to see where God's working, and he's doing some stuff that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Often it's really a great picture of what heaven will be
Mm-hmm.
like.
100%.
With when it's with the diversity. I imagine also, when you're at a church like that, you kind of have to know your worldview. You kind of mentioned how
Mm-hmm.
when you're sharing the gospel, when you're evangelizing to the community, you're dealing with a lot of different worldviews, different
Yeah.
people that know their worldview and they know why they believe what they believe, and they don't agree with Christianity.
Hmm.
And some that might have no idea what they believe, but at least if they're young people, they're in college, a lot of them are going to at least have an idea of what their worldview is. Even people that are coming from other countries, they might be
Hmm.
more open to it, but they know what they believe.
Hmm.
It's from an apologetic standpoint, I feel like you kind of have to be ready to defend your faith from different angles.
100%. It's actually that's what we'll be going over. I kind of lead our youth right now. We don't have many, but our few youth that we have, and just it's a pretty new thing for us, our youth group. And what I've learned in just a few months is that that's where we're going to have to start. And so we're going to kind of go back apologetics and start like square one, like does truth even exist?
Right.
And it's
Right.
almost and that's kind of what we've learned with a lot of our people is that whether they came to Christ at our church or claimed to be Christians before they came, they're very young in their faith for the
Hmm.
most part.
Hmm.
And man, we've kind of had to start square one with a lot of, which has been a good thing
Right.
because there's not been a ton of like unlearning that needs to be done.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like let's just build and go. And
Yeah.
so again, I've only been there 2.5 years, but man, I've seen some awesome growth in some people's lives um, that I mean we can't even take credit for. It's just kind of only
Hmm.
been God working and doing some things. Like um, one of the ways we kind of talk about it is here in the South, or especially around the upstate of South Carolina, it is culturally beneficial for someone to say they're a Christian.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
in most circumstances,
Yeah.
right? Um, and where we're at in Boston, like it is majorly detrimental culturally, to say that you're a Christian. Like we have a lot of people. Hey, I love my friend. I want to tell them about the gospel. I'm scared that if I do, like they're not going to talk to me anymore. Which
Hmm.
is just I don't know. I never felt like I dealt with that here at all.
Right.
Like somebody might be like not interested, but we're still hanging out and we're still cool, And but I
Yeah.
mean, people that are like, oh, you believe that you're a wackadoodle. I don't really want to hang out with you
Yeah.
anymore, which is just I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just strange to me. But that's definitely something we've had to deal with a little bit, which has been again kind of cool to see that that growth of trying to process through
Hmm.
that like fear of rejection, but also like, but it's so important that I have to tell them,
Yeah.
and so it's been interesting to kind of see some of those things, but yeah, the discipleship thing has been it's been really fun, really cool to kind of see that play out, and we've had to do that in some different ways, but yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
Right. I had the opportunity to talk to your dad
Hmm.
not too recently about evangelism and going out in the
Hmm.
community and sharing the gospel. And you already have highlighted some of the ways it looks different
Yeah.
in Boston.
Hmm.
When you go out in the community and you're sharing the gospel, people, I'm sure you've had some stories. What has that experience been like? And
Yep.
have people, especially, I mean, imagine you have people in your church coming from different backgrounds.
Hmm.
Sometimes that might help
Yeah.
in certain ways.
Oh, 100%. It absolutely does. One of the ways it helps is there's a decent amount of Spanish speakers in our community, and we have a handful of them in our church, and so
Good.
we've been able to share the gospel in ways that I never would be able to. So
Right.
that's been cool,
Right.
just from a logistical standpoint. But yeah, we've had to kind of lean into that relational um, evangelism kind of model and try to. That's something we're really trying to push with our people. Is like you eat lunch every day. You can find one day a week where you can take your coworker to lunch, or I don't know, you're a mother and your neighbor is also a mother. Y'all can go on a walk together or whatever. Just trying to find one day a week where you do something that's with the purpose of building a relationship for sharing the gospel, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And kind of talking to our people about there are two major ways that you can share the gospel with words. One is you can open your Bible and speak scripture to them,
Yeah.
and there's just a lot of people in our specific neighborhood that are just man. You open a Bible and they're turned off. They're tuning it out, right?
Right.
And the scripture, obviously, there's power in the gospel, and God can
Mm-hmm.
do what He wants, and I can share the gospel very poorly, and God
Yeah.
can bring people to Himself. Um, but the other side of that is you have a story, right? That God has done things in your life, and our community is really big on what's your truth, what
Yeah.
matters to you, and so hey, tell them your truth, and sure, relate it back to scripture. That's good, do that, but Be like, yeah, I read this scripture and it seemed really weird to me, and I don't know, but now here I am a couple years later, and I've seen that play out in my life, so I've seen it be true. And so, yeah, just trying to kind of lean into that, like tell people your story. Like they're
Hmm.
not going to deny what God's done in your life, even though
Right.
they may, completely turn off or walk away or cuss you out or whatever if you open the Bible.
Yeah.
It blows my mind some of the things
Yeah.
that people get mad about. Handing out flyers to a trivia night where we're not even sharing the gospel. We're just telling them, "Hey, Jesus loves you. We're here for you," and
Right.
they'll just like take it, throw it away, and cuss you out. It's a trivia night, man. And so there's some weird stuff like that, and you just kind of have to go, you know what, whatever. You shake it off. There are people that need to hear about the Lord, and God can convict them even through those actions, which I think is super interesting to see sometimes where
Hmm. Yeah.
people get really hostile, and I mean they still have to go to sleep at night, and God can convict you at any time. So
Right.
yeah, there's
That's
some
right.
challenges. It's some hard things, but man, God's moving, working. We baptized 3 this year,
Awesome.
and then 3
Awesome.
last year as well. Um, 2 of those 6 were church members that kind of had to get some baptism things straight, which is again one of the things you deal with when you have a bunch of church backgrounds that come into
Right.
one thing. And I was sprinkled as a kid, and then blah blah blah, and you kind of talk them through the baptism thing. And then 4 of them were first time never given their life to Christ, have done so within the last 2 years.
Awesome.
And I mean, from all kinds of different like backgrounds. We have a lady that was in an abusive lesbian relationship that came and gave her life to Christ, that we almost didn't have anything to do with her introduction to script to our church or the gospel. She just found us online and started watching for months, and then got out
Wow.
of that relationship, showed up to church. She's now serving every single week, and
Wow.
it's really cool to watch what God's doing in her life. To another lady who we do a basketball camp is one of the things we do in our community to kind of try to do something for the kids, and then we share the gospel every single night, whether they like it or not. And
Right.
a lady that brought her kids to church after we did the basketball camp all week long, and has given her life to Christ and continued to be a strong servant. Um, Praying for her husband to give his life to Christ. He's been at church probably 75% of the time that she's been there,
Hmm.
and so
Wow.
he's really asking questions and coming along and some things like that. And people that we've hired to run sounds that don't know Jesus but are
Right.
respectful of our beliefs and stuff, and eventually gave his life to Christ and has
Wow.
been baptized. So I mean, it's some different kind of things. I know when you talk to my dad, he had talked a lot about like going into people's homes and things of that nature, and we tried some things of that it's the northeastern culture is just a little different,
Right.
and they hate it when you show up to their house. And so I know it's really weird. Even like friends, people don't like you to come into their place. I think it's probably because their place is so small. All the places are so small. They're
Yeah.
like, this is my one place I can get away. I don't
Yeah.
know. And so we've had to try some different things, like I said, the basketball camps, or like really lean into that relational. Like, hey, if you find someone that you start hitting off a relationship with or can be friends with or whatever, think about that in terms of the gospel, not just, oh, this is a cool person. This is
Yeah.
a good friend.
Yeah.
Like, think about that in terms of the gospel and where that can go. So,
Yeah. For sure. From a worship aspect,
mm,
someone who leads worship, you have had the opportunity to kind of be creative with that. I mean,
yeah.
there is as you mentioned, people from different backgrounds.
Hmm.
When you go about that, that can be a challenge. You talk about worship wars in our part of
Hmm.
this of in the Bible Belt. How has the experience with worship been for
Sure.
you?
Well, it's been cool because there's not been worship wars. Because when I got there, I remember asking Ivy, like, can you give me a list of the songs that your people know so I can have like a baseline to start from, and then we can work out from there. He's like, man, they don't know anything. Just start. He's like, just start where you want. And so it's been kind of cool because a lot of them just don't have a major church background.
Yeah.
And so we're just, these are the first worship songs they've heard consistently,
Hmm.
as well as like we have a K-Love radio station that started like 6 or 8 months before I got there, and that was
Okay.
like the one Christian radio station that's going on there right now. And so it's just not worship music's not in their normal rotation in life, or hasn't been for in the past.
Hmm.
And so I try to do a little of everything. It's been really fun. There's some try to do a hymn every week. There's some of those people that don't like moving, they love those hymns. uh, and it's good theology, and we try to do some stuff that kind of has a little bit of a lean towards like a more gospel sound, and some things are a little different. It's kind of everything in between, and I honestly have had no pushback on anything worship wise, and so I
Right.
try to keep it eclectic because the church is diverse,
Yeah,
and so
certainly.
but it's been good. It's been really good. I don't know how familiar you are with the Ginseng program
Hmm.
for college students. We had 6 college students that came up and served with us all summer, and that was one of the things that we kind of charged them with is like, hey, we have a lot of people in our church that will uh, they love the Lord, but they're still figuring out like how this worship thing is supposed to look or work or whatever. And we're not too bothered at how you worship as long as that you worship, is
Right.
what we're concerned about. And so kind of charged our Jensen students with, man, be free in your worship. Worship, like, don't spread out throughout the congregation if you want, and just worship when it's when and think about the Lord, sing to Him. And it's something that I have been um, kind of thinking about recently. I sat in worship at a service where a guy had kind of said this, and I thought it was is very cool and interesting. Is I've always thought about worship as singing to that audience of one, singing to the Lord, and that is most a lot of the songs, if not most of them. But he said, yes, do that, but also you're singing this to your neighbor
Hmm.
together. We're worshiping the Lord. Like, hey, I believe this. We believe this. Let's worship Him together. And so, um, trying to kind of incorporate some more of that kind of stuff in our worship service. But it's been really interesting to see. We keep a score every week at what we think our crowd participation score is, and it's been really good for the last like half a year. So
Good. Good.
it's been awesome to see um, some of those songs kind of permeate their lives a little bit. And I'm very conscious with the songs that we sing that are simple in their message, not necessarily like repeat the same line 27 times, although some of them do, but simple in their message to where, like, when we sing them, people, whether English is their first language or not, go, I understand that. Like, I get that. I get what this
Hmm.
song is saying,
Hmm.
and trying to use that to be some of those building blocks of their faith. So,
Yeah. We think about a diverse group of people worshiping together. Worship is a spot where they can have community, right? And
100%.
sometimes there can be difficulty if you have a diverse group of people to have community.
hmm
Have you found that there's pretty good community even though it's a diverse group?
I really have, yes. And that's been the most personally encouraging thing about being there.
Hmm.
Um, we have 3 we call community groups that meet. Small group, Sunday school, it's all the same basically. But 3 community groups that meet throughout the week. There was 2 when I got there, um, and one of my favorite things is we've done. Um, we're starting our second time doing a study across all of the groups together at the same time, where each group is doing the same study every week. Um, and we had multiple people last year when we did that kind of study that, hey, I'm not going to be able to make my group this Tuesday, so I'm going to go to the Wednesday one because I know they're doing it. And so it would, I don't know. I've always felt like community groups sometimes can become like, we love our community group, and then you don't really invest in a lot of the other people right
Hmm.
outside of. And so it
Hmm.
was really cool to kind of see people go, oh, I'm not going to be able to make my Wednesday. I'm going to go Thursday because I know what they're doing. They're good people. I like them,
Yeah,
and so it's been cool to kind of see it's community like cross church, and we're
that's
not
awesome.
that big of a church,
Yeah.
right? We hit over 70 people on a Sunday a few times this past year, which was by far the most that we've ever had.
Right.
And so we're somewhere around like 45, 50 a week is
Okay.
kind of what we have, and really good community. I mean, honestly,
Awesome.
I've been encouraged by that,
Hmm.
and kind of seeing, and that's one of the things that we're pushing to is like in a city where you are only going to get um, spiritual things if you seek for them, if you seek them.
Hmm.
You're not really going to accidentally hear worship music
Hmm.
at work, or have the person beside you on the bus listening to a sermon. It's just probably not going to happen, right?
Right. Right.
Um, that you need to invest in the relationships with people in the church. You need to hang out with each other, and do so, and encourage one another, or like, have a relationship with people in the church to the point where when you have a rough day at work or this situation where you're not sure what to do, you have somebody to call up and be like, hey, just this is what's going on. What do you think?
Right.
And
Right.
so I've been encouraged to kind of see that happen um, throughout our church across, ethnical lines and everything else. So it's been really good.
Right. Oftentimes, and this is not always the case, certainly, but I've had some, not many, but some pastors mention the fact that they've had issues with cliques, in
Hmm.
their own church in the South, right? In the
Hmm.
South, there's sometimes there churches that have been around for a very long time, that have had members that have been
Yep.
there for, 50, 60 years.
Hmm.
People get in their groups, and sometimes it's hard for those groups to intermingle.
Yep.
But when with your church, being a church plant 6 years now,
Hmm.
has been, um, they're all seeking after the same thing, and they're
Yeah.
all kind of admitting the same thing, like, "Hey, we're broken people, and we really do want this," and it's
Yeah.
easier for that community probably to form.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is. And um, I those groups are not a bad thing in and of themselves.
Right, right,
They're bad when they uh, don't include other people or don't give
right,
the opportunity for inclusion for other people. And so,
absolutely.
like, trying to help our people understand, um, and something that God has helped me understand in my life, is that you're wired the way you're wired because God made you to be wired that way, which
Mhm,
means the people
mhm,
that you really click with, the people you're really good friends with, it's because y'all are wired that way. Like,
right,
you should be better friends with some people than others, but you should love everyone equally, right? And so it's that idea of like, hey man, if there's 5 or 6, you know, ladies that are good friends here, or 5 or 6 guys that like playing board games over here, whatever, do your thing, go for it. Just
yeah,
be inclusive of anybody that's interested. First off, and then second off, use those groups for the gospel. Like, something we've been really preaching a lot recently is, you hear that Jesus hung out with sinners often. Kind of, really, sinners hung out with Jesus. That's really
right,
more how it worked. And
right,
so, like, live your life, do your things. You like board games, go play board games. If you like, I don't know, shopping, go shop. But look at those people around that, one, are unbelievers, or two, that may not be like plugged into one of those groups of friends or
mhm,
whatever, and just include, like, just ask them, hey, will you go do this with me? I love
yeah,
it with youth. Youth are fun because they'll do anything. They're like, I gotta go, I don't know, buy new tires today. You want to come with me? Okay. Like, they'll do anything. Like, it's so funny. But people really are that way, where um, the gospel is an attractive thing when it's working in someone's life.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
yeah, it just kind of, what people want to know, why you're joyful or happy, or why you even think to ask them to go get tires with you or whatever, right? And
right,
so,
right.
just kind of including people in the things you do is a good way, for both evangelism and discipleship.
Absolutely.
So,
The Ginseng program
mhm,
has been great. For I know many people when I was with Greenville that went on the Ginseng
mhm,
program, changed their life, especially for people that are thinking about ministry.
mhm.
Um, Sometimes I think it'd be great for all churches to take these
Yeah.
mission trips because you can experience a different culture in our own country.
Mhm.
That's the reality. Is we have a very diverse country, a huge country,
Yeah.
and you can experience a different culture in Boston than you are in Greenville, South Carolina. What was that experience like for those guys?
Mhm.
I mean, it certainly, I'm sure it changed their walk with
Yeah.
Christ and their view of the church.
No, 100%. This is the second year in a row we've had a group come up, and we had 5 last year, 6 this year,
Mhm.
and none of them. There are 11 different students. Boston actually has the largest ginseng, like, in the country in terms of people coming there. We
Wow.
had
Yeah.
99 this year total across.
Wow.
I want to say the number was 18 churches,
Okay.
something like that. And yeah, he every single year. John Chastain is the guy that heads it up there, and that's his job at the Sin Network, is Ginseng Boston. And I know he was shooting for like 120. I don't know. He would take as many if they would give him 200. He would do 200. He would
Right.
get them there.
Right.
Um, but it's been a huge help for us. If you're a college student listening, or a parent of a college kid, just give them this, plant this idea in their minds if it's something that they might be interested in. Um, it is, especially for places like Boston where the churches are not huge. Having 5 or 6 people, like, just from a manpower perspective, is incredible.
Right.
It is. No, we get a lot of things done with them there that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. You take things like a trivia night or a movie night or something where they can, you want to get flyers out or advertise for it or whatever, and you have like manpower to kind of like, hey, this afternoon, this is what y'all are doing, and they'll just boom, go, and then you have flyers everywhere.
Yeah.
It's been really nice to do that. But also, what we've tried to do is structure our ginseng in a way that they are one seeing a different culture and trying to figure out what does it look like to live for Christ here in Boston, um, and then giving them the freedom to kind of do that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we've challenged them with is, while you're here, try to meet somebody every week that doesn't know Christ that you can talk with some more throughout the summer.
Yeah.
And then we give them a day to just explore Boston, to kind of fall in love with the city. And while you're doing that, invite those people that you've been meeting, right? Hey, want to do the Freedom Trail where you can go see all the historical stuff. And I've never been here. Would you want to go show me kind of how it works, where to go? Sure. Why not? And then you have a whole afternoon you're spending with an unbeliever, and having conversations and doing stuff. And so, that's kind of, we've really tried to give them opportunities to meet people in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
find out what it looks like to live on mission in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the very least they have spread the gospel to 6 or 8 people that they've had the chance to come in contact with.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the scale, like the ultimate goal for us personally would be, and then when they graduate high school and they got to go work somewhere, maybe they would consider coming back to Boston and
Right.
and plugging themselves into a church there and still living on mission in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are a handful of the people from this past year's Ginseng that have said this is what I want to do, and
Yeah.
I know of 3 or 4 of them that have already started like plans in place to do that, not through our church, but through the 99 that have come.
Right.
And then we have a girl that was on our team last year who is coming back to lead the team this year, and has already expressed that she wants to move to Boston when she graduates. And so,
Right.
yeah, it's really cool. We are operating under the premise that the greatest pastors and the greatest churches for this next generation to reach Boston are not believers yet.
Mm.
That's kind of the premise that we're operating under, is like the greatest churches are not here yet. Greatest pastors don't know Jesus yet. And so it's, God has looked through history at, people like D.L. Moody, who gave his life to Christ in Boston. There's a plaque on the wall that's really cool to go see if you ever come up and visit.
Right.
Jonathan Edwards, Martin Luther, Billy Graham, all those people, and myself, Ivy, the different leaders we have at our church, the Ginsenders that come there, the different people in our church. We are the people that God has chosen to send to Boston right now, right? He didn't send Billy Graham right now. He didn't send D.L. Moody right now. That doesn't mean that, I'm some super Christian or whatever, like, yay, look at me. It's just more so like, okay, I have a responsibility then.
Mm.
And not only do I have a responsibility, but if God has chosen me to do this, then he's responsible for the fruit. And it's just my job to kind of be faithful and see what he does. Right.
Yeah.
And so like using ginseng as kind of to help pour into them, but also to use them as an example to some of our people to kind of see like, okay, like there's some like real life things I can do. Like we got a few calls this summer from our ginsenders during the middle of the week. Hey, I know we're supposed to be at small group tonight, but we met this guy and his son, and they're trying to get their groceries home. Can we help them do that? Yeah, go do that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do it. Or we met this lady and she's moving tomorrow. Can we go help them move instead of doing whatever? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so like those kind of things to help kind of our people see from a discipleship standpoint that what discipleship is loving people with the love of God, and then watching him transform you as that happens. Right.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. One of the important things about this ministry is helping. We want to make sure that we're helping the ministry in the best way that we can. In Boston, like you said, there's only a few gospel preaching churches there. There might not be a lot of local support like you can get here. So for people that are in our area that want to say, hey, how can we help? How do you want to lead them? How can we help y'all?
Well, first off, obviously, pray. And there is, I guess we can, give email out at the end, and we'll give our website and stuff, and you can go on there and sign up for a newsletter that we give so you can actually get updates. So you're not just praying blindly. You can see some of the things that is going on and you can pray for specifically. We like to send out like videos every couple months or so to give updates that way as well. So please pray. God really is doing some stuff in some people's lives, and it's really cool to see. And then second, I mean, we really do need financial support. It is such an expensive city. Like I have recently moved in September, and myself and my fiance got a place together that she'll move in when we get married. I'm there right now, and we're paying $2,300 for rent a month, which sounds like a lot. And if you were to ask anybody there about our place and kind of like the location and the price and everything, they would say that we have a steal. Like this is a God thing that we have a deal this good. It's just
Right.
kind of the way Boston is. It's just crazy expensive, and that includes everything at the church. And so we don't have a lot of overhead at the church right now to do ministry. One, and then both myself and Ivy raise some support for our own salaries from year to year. Currently, we've not had to get second jobs. If God provides by me having to get a second job, that's what he does.
Right.
But he's done some miraculous things to get us here to this point. But yeah, we're in the process of trying to raise that money so that I can stay full time, next year. And the church is growing, but as I mentioned, the average time someone's in Boston is 18 to 24 months. So you kind of have to grow like twice as fast because people
Yeah.
they leave and move out all over the country. And then and that's actually something that we really would like prayer for as well. Is we really see ourselves, because of the way Boston is so transient and people move out. We see ourselves as a hub that can send people out, that are sending people out all over the world. Because the members at our church, we have people graduating from Harvard and MIT, and like some leaders in fields across the world that we're getting to kind of send out into those fields and other parts of the world to, hey, go be the gospel in that workplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so pray that we would do that well and be able to kind of do some speed discipleship in the
Yeah.
18, 24 months that they're there, to kind of grow them to the point where they can go be the gospel to those places. So pray for that. Yeah, any sort of financial help that we could get, man, the more finances that we take in, that's more ministry that we can do. We are very, very frugal with the money we have so that we can do as much ministry as we can.
Yeah.
And so, and
Understood.
we are not the only church in Boston. There's many churches that are looking for that kind of help. But I can also tell you that it's a place that's well worth the investment right now. Like God is doing some stuff. There are people coming to the Lord, and we really feel like there's, this wave is going to break at some point, and there's going to be a landfall of believers that are coming to Christ. So we're excited about it. But yeah, pray, give if you can, and then pray some more.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Matthew, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll put a website link in the
Sure.
description.
Mhm.
You also have an app that they can go on and
Yep,
check
yeah,
out, right?
arborwaychurch.com is our website. And then if you're interested in emailing me, it's just matt@arborwaychurch.com. As well as we have an app, Arborway Community Church, on
Okay.
both iPhone and Android, and that's basically our website. So if you're interested in giving or anything, you can do it through the app, through the website, or if you want to see kind of what's going on, anything like that. That's an easy way to communicate with us.
Okay, awesome. Is
Mhm.
there anything else you wanted to mention before we close out here?
Man, I just appreciate you letting us come on and kind of talk a little bit about Boston. If you have any chance to get up to Boston, please come see us. I would recommend that you would do so and kind of see the things that God's doing in Boston on a different scale than He's doing it here. It's a different feel, but it's really kind of cool.
Awesome.
So,
Matthew, thank you so much,
thanks,
man.
man.
Appreciate doing it. All right, I'm Wilson Parris. That's a good word.